Oh, Dr. Rob, I'm going to put the first one, going to put it in answered.
Right.
And it popped up to too high on my computer. So how do I get past cravings? I'm a chemsex addict. That's a great question. So what do you
Yeah,
have to
I
say
mean, there's a
about
lot of
that?
questions inside that question. Like, just the same person? No.
No,
When
I
was
just,
so there's two pieces, right? If there's the chem piece, which is how long have you been sober, and are you completely sober? Are you doing other, drinking or doing poppers, or that's not going to be helpful. So part of it is, how are you? And let me go to the sex part. If you don't get sober on drugs and alcohol, you can forget the sex part. Because if you get high, it's like, oh, I know I wasn't going to do that, but hey, what's the big deal? So I'm not saying that you don't have to work on them at the same time, but you certainly won't be able to do any behavioral stuff like gambling or sex if you're high. So, um, and the sex part, just to say it, and then I'll go back to the whole thing. It's very deliberate. Oh, let me say it this way. What sex addicts long for is connection. We are some of the most isolated people on earth. I mean, really, inside of us, we have so much shame. We think we're the only one. The more you can connect with sex addicts, just even if you just go to a meeting online and listen, like the more you can hear the stories that you relate to, the goal is to reduce some of the shame. And I would be careful about there's a program in the gay community, if you are one, where it's acceptable to do any kind of drug as long as it isn't meth. And so I'd be cautious about that. Um, Cravings are one, now I want Tammy to jump in here, but cravings to me are one day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time. And I can tell you one thing that it doesn't work is holding on, and saying, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this. And just for all of you, a better way of looking at it is I could do this. I gotta pay attention to this. I can't fix this by myself. So anyway, there's like 12 questions in that question, but Tammy, what I missed, or do you have some thoughts?
no, but like there's 12 questions in a question that's like one line, but you're so right. And I really appreciated, Dr. Rob, how you're talking about like if you're focusing on, just hanging on rather than how do I go do something healthy. One of the things, and there's so many resources, but one of the things that we talk about in our online work groups is some foundational components, which would be, what's in your inner circle, what's in your middle circle, but what's in your outer circle. Those are the healthy behaviors that really, and I love one of the facilitators talks about doing it across to all of the addictive behaviors. I think that's really key. It's like, what do I
Can you
need to do for my
explain?
healthy?
Not everyone might know
Yes.
what an outer circle means. Can you
Okay,
explain?
so
Not the whole thing, but
one
just
of
the,
the yeah, right. One of the
yeah.
foundational pieces is, the inner circle, three circle plan. Inner circle is the things that would be a relapse, problematic behaviors, chem and sex. Okay, those two things for sure, and whatever else. Middle circle, I'm on thin ice. These are like I might be sliding towards, acting out in one of my inner circle behaviors. The outer circle is the healthy things that we do for our recovery, for our life, for healthy connections. I've been asked before, do the circles change? And I always say, yes, hopefully. The outer circle is getting bigger because your life is getting more expanded. You have more friends. You're doing more healthy activities that are real and meaningful connections in your life. So yes, hopefully you're learning more about, oh, this is good for me. I really like, journaling or yoga or whatever it is that you didn't do when you were acting out. So learning some foundational components. We have lots of resources, the websites that are behind both Dr. Rob and I, tons of resources for everyone on both of those sites. And you can always email me and Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, and I will help you parse through, what might be most useful. But yeah, like if I'm, thinking about, no, I'm not gonna eat that chocolate cake. No, I'm not gonna eat that chocolate cake. All I'm going to be thinking about is the stupid chocolate cake, so it really is, what can I do to be of service to others? What can I do that will be sometimes it's just a distraction. What do I need to do to get my mind off of that? So it's okay to, to do something healthy. I like going for a walk. I like, going hiking. I like doing things outside. It helps me, but
I want to
So
add one thing,
please,
which is schedule.
yes,
It is, well, two things, schedule and accountability. You know, if you are craving every 3 hours, you should talk to someone every hour and a half. I mean, and believe me, there are enough people in a 12-step program. If you're involved in one, you can find 12 people who will talk to you every 6 hours. You know, I mean, you can do that. You may have to, depends on how hard you want to work. You may need to stay with somebody. They may need to stay with you. You know, maybe you can't get past the cravings by yourself. But I was mentioning scheduling. I think if you can not only set a schedule where there's something for your recovery every day, but who are you checking in with and what are you doing in the afternoon? And I don't care if you write down watching the Great British Baking Show, you know, for 2 hours, because I'd probably do that. But anyway,
I would
make
too.
sure it's on the schedule, and that, you know, it's really, we act out over unstructured time, especially for a loan. So structure your time. It also makes us feel like, oh, as opposed to, gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh, I'm going to go do that. So
Yes.
anyway, that's what I got. That's what you got. Let's move on.
Yes. Okay. The next one. What's a reasonable timeline for someone to have non-sex related restrictions set from partners to make them feel safe? That feels
Non-related.
like a loaded question, doesn't it?
What is a reasonable time for someone to have non-sex related restrictions? I'm not even sure what that means exactly.
Okay. So to me, this is a partner. This is what a partner set a healthy boundary for them. And so, but it's not about sex, but somebody is, to me, this is an addict's going like, how long should I have to go by the partner's restrictions,
Oh, I see.
on me? Does that make sense?
Well, kind of. I mean, non-sex related, I think of um like my spouse doesn't want
It,
to travel with me, or my
like it could
spouse
be a
doesn't,
phone password, or I mean, it could be,
could be
I mean,
anything.
it could be a variety of things. Yes. So,
So I think I can just say a few things, which is, to me, what a reasonable timeline is dependent on is what they're doing for recovery. You know, if my partner is being honest with me about what's going on, where they are, what they did, if they're giving me access to everything I want to see, if they are, I know they're going to meetings, I know they have a sponsor, I know they have a therapist, I know they're fully engaged, they're reading the books. I'm not giving the books, they're actually going out and buying them, or they're going to podcasts. You're not saying you should listen. You know, when they take their recovery as their own responsibility, I think that is when I would feel safe. And someone might do that in a month, they might do it in a year, they might never do it. So in part, you know, and I don't think you partners should feel like you're crazy. You know, we may say we're in recovery, we may be mouthing the right words, but really you have to see what we're doing and over time. So so now I want you to add to this, Tammy, because I still don't quite understand. The only thing I
okay.
think about is
So to me,
intimacy.
what it is I'm and you wrote a one sentence. So this is the story I'm making up about this is I'm an addict and I'm getting restrictions put on me and I don't like them. And rather than going, gosh, I've done things that make my partner feel unsafe. And
Right.
my highest priority is my recovery and my relationship. And so what do I need to do to make my partner feel safe and trust me rather than resentment, which, you know, if you read anything in the 12 steps, you read about resentment as our number one killer on all of these things. So what I read is I'm resentful that my partner is making me not be able to do something that I perceive that I want to do. And I hold that in a higher spot than making my partner feel safe and trust it, that I'm trustworthy and that our relationship is the most important thing. So to me, it would be like not yet by a long shot. How's that?
We teach a course about this, and if you go take a look at the courses on our website, which are both up there, there are one specific about this particular issue. And I would really, you know, if you don't know what to do, learn it. I did write one more thing down that I think addicts don't understand, which is, I'll say it like I'm talking to someone. You know, I may have cheated you, but I always put the money in the bank. I always was responsible when I, you know, with our finances or with coming, you know, whatever it is, I was always responsible for your mother, taking care of your mom, whatever. And so why don't you trust me, like with the finances, when you know I never did anything wrong with the finances, I just did this thing, over here with sex. And that may be absolutely true, but trust cannot be parsed. You can't say, I trust you. Either you trust somebody or you don't. And so until you have regained that person's trust, that's how long the timeline is. And you have to do it in doing some of the ways that Tammy's talking about. And I don't, you do sound resentful. And I think that's not going to lead you where you want to go. One of the things I write about, and you could also see it in some of the courses, is this idea that, you're not an equal in the relationship anymore. You are one down. The moment you decide to lie and cheat, and, now you lose the right to make the primary decisions and when you earn your way back through trustworthy behavior over time, could be 6 months, a year, then you have the equity to say, well, I want this and I don't like that. Right now, I would suggest if you're feeling like this, don't say anything and go to a therapist or a sponsor and say, I just so angry, and see if they can calm you down before you go back. Anyway.
Yeah, well, and the finances, that's a great example, but I mean, we've had people that are like, I should be able to watch the TV programs that I want to watch and whatever. I mean, it's some of this stuff is so minimal compared to what you stand to gain by being in a relationship and lose by not being in that relationship. So I love that you suggested go see a trusted professional, like somebody who's really qualified in this area, a sponsor, and go like, help me look at really how important this is, because a lot of times, if you get the right perspective on things, you go, yeah, I'm digging my heels in, having a tantrum over, and I say this truly with love. I've been there, done that. So this is like, what is ultimately your goal? And if your goal is to be in a healthy relationship, and why would we not all want to have, a healthy, joyous relationship? Like that should be our real goal. How do we achieve that? Not by, having a tantrum. So back in the day, I got told, I used to bang my high chair and I was like, oh, all affronted. But then I was like, oh, I'm banging my high chair. So like, I seriously say this as been there, done that. I'm not, I'm not scolding or anything. So
I'm not sure how that got into this thread, but
because I'm having a tantrum,
Oh,
so.
I see. Thank you. Because what I wanted to write down is you're not being punished. This isn't someone saying you did this and now you deserve that. These are this person's boundaries. And what I need everybody to know is boundaries are not for someone else. They're for you. She's not trying to punish you. She's trying to keep herself safe by setting these boundaries. And I think it's in the larger sense, you just need to respect them. She's not saying, I'm going to take away your toy. That is a little kid responding. She's saying, I don't feel safe or comfortable as a woman, with your being involved in this or sharing this or whatever. That's a whole different, now if you turn into mom, I've got some books for you to read. But anyway, enough. We did good.
I am a recovering SA 40 days now and have recently discovered that I could have sexual intimacy anorexia. Do you find that they go hand in hand? I have been with my partner 8 years and have such a hard time being intimate with him. It was easier for me to go get a massage.
Yeah, I think that so many of us run into this, and this is the hardest part of our recovery. You would think that stopping the behavior is the hardest part. But once we get honest with ourselves and really commit to change, over time, not acting out in that way becomes how we live. But the other side of it is, what do we do about having sex with people we care about? And if you think about, well, I'll just speak for myself. I grew up in a relationship with a parent who I was her caretaker. I was her partner. I was, she told me all the things she didn't like in her life. In other words, my mom was just icky, too close to me. And that's in part what led to my acting out and the way I act out. Because I don't act out in relationships. I act out pretty anonymously. So my acting out allowed me to feel like I was getting intimacy as an adult, because the truth is what I learned from my mom is all I learned about intimacy. And so to now walk back into an adult relationship with someone that I care about and they love me, and that is terrifying, because the last time I had deep emotional connection, I was used and I was taken advantage of. And I didn't learn how to be cared about anyway. So the bottom line is that all of us struggle with this issue past the active addiction. And there are many ways to learn how to begin to be intimate. And Tammy talks a lot about sensate focus, that's outside of us. So, which is a process that you can go to about connecting. There are sex therapists who can help you as long as they're respectful of sex addiction. But I'll be really honest, because my partner's not going to hear this. When we go to bed at night, we've been together 22 years. If you wanted to be sexual, I would much rather read the paper. I mean, because on some level, being approached for sex is scary for me. If I have more control, then I feel safer. If I initiate, if I, so, yeah, it was easier. It's so much easier to get a massage because there's no threat there. That massage, you're in complete control. You can hire them, you can not hire them. You can say, I didn't like you. They can say, go away. You're not going to have your feelings hurt. We don't have the investment, the emotional investment in strangers or even with affair partners because we're not fully there. But we are deeply invested with partners that we've been with for 8 years. And that makes it so much harder because of our wounds to be intimate with the people we're close to. The last thing I just want to say, because this is a good one, is that a colleague, a friend of mine said, he said, sex addicts seek intensity when what they want is intimacy. So I might be with my partner of 8 years and, I've seen that butt before and, I've known them really well. And so if I'm going to be sexual with them, it's going to come out of the relationship and the connection we have. But when I'm looking at a sex worker or looking at porn or having an affair, that's I may have not seen that butt before. We're hiding, we're in secret. It's exciting. And so in addiction, may not be good, but it's exciting. In addiction, when I'm acting out sexually or when I have sex, it's all about excitement and intensity. But it's not going to be like that when you're lying next to someone you've been with for 7 years. I mean, maybe they put on a Halloween mask, but for the most part, you know who they are. So, and I'll just say this for me, sex in an intimate relationship did not come out of my being horny. It wasn't like when I was acting out like, oh, I want some of that, no, I want some of that. That's coming from horny. In an intimate relationship, for us, sex comes from being willing. It comes from being willing to say, I know I feel uncomfortable, but I'm going to stroke their hair and I'm going to let them massage my shoulders. And then we're going to hold each other and, oh my God, we were aroused. And oh my goodness, we had sex and it was wonderful. If you were not headed toward, we're going to lie down and have sex, but just be willing to explore physically and emotionally, you'll get there. And I will say this too, the best sex I've ever had in my life was when I was deeply connected in my marriage. I don't know why. I mean, that was intense and all that. There was something about feeling safe and being this open with someone because how it's such a vulnerable act. But I never knew that because how different they were. So intensity is something if you're looking for in your relationship, you're not going to have. And if you've had that 1,000 times, you might say to yourself, I'm not attracted to my partner. Well, no, not in the way you did that. But if you're open to connection, you will find yourself aroused. And by the way, one more thing, sorry to talk so much, Tammy. One of the things that really bugs me, I think that we struggle with is I will be lying next to someone I love and I will all of a sudden get in the feeling like I don't want to be sexual with you, or I want to think about someone else, or, whatever that is. We have to tell them. We don't have to tell them like I was thinking about someone else, but we need to say, I got a little distracted. Can we move back a step? Because first of all, they feel it. And second of all, we don't want to push ourselves into anything. We need to have control by slowing down. And if we notice we go here or there, we let our partner know, we back up. We don't have to be like, I will prove what a great sex partner I am. That's actually not intimate. Intimate is saying, hey, I'm struggling with this and you're inviting your partner toward you, not by looking good and having the biggest that or the what is that. It's about being open. So I know I've said a million things, Tammy. I'm sorry to go on, but all the stuff is in my head.
It was really, really good. And so I want to tag on a couple of things. First of all, 40 days, fabulous, but really early in the process. Right. Give yourself some space. Second of all, the betrayed partner typically is the one who has a say so over about when, all of this starts back up, when they are feeling safe and that there can be trust. Third of all, I would really invite you to not label yourself with something else. You got enough going on. This to me is such a standard part of, the recovery journey with this. So rather than going, oh my gosh, now I have a sexual intimacy anorexia, you have intimacy issues, like the guys that come to our treatment program, it's sex addiction intimacy disorder. What Dr. Rob was talking about, the intensity rather than intimacy. Absolutely. You can learn, but it's the scary process of being willing, just like he was talking about. It's like, I have to be willing. But rather than throwing another label up and going, oh my gosh, now what? Like, slow it all down and just be willing. And he mentioned the sensate focus. When you guys are ready to re-engage, then slow it down. It's the whole, can we hold hands? Can we like it isn't about just having sex, or performing or any of that. It's about I'm going to be willing, to connect in a real and meaningful way, not the head fantasy stuff that that often is the case for sex addicts. So
One
okay.
more thing, I'm sorry. You have to make
Sure.
sure your partner
No.
knows that you get shut down around this. Otherwise, they might think it's them. And I think it's really, and partners, even if without the sex addictions, people say, oh, maybe I'm not this enough for them anymore or that. And I think for you to be really honest and fair, say, this is the hardest part for me. This is what I really struggle with, leaves your partner feeling compassionate toward you instead of feeling like they did something wrong, because this is not about them. So what do we got next?
Okay, so the next one, what is the difference between slips and relapses? My porn addicted husband is not telling me when he slips, looks at porn and masturbates. Does that mean he is relapsing instead? He's in a CSAT led men's group and will hopefully be starting SAA. He is convinced he is getting better because there's more time between slips, but I'm still completely in the dark. Tired of hearing he's in recovery and getting better when he's not open and honest. Clarification on PA slip versus relapse question. I am in a 12-step at the drop-ins and in a CSAT-led betrayal group, doing my best to focus on my own lane. Thank you for adding that. So Dr. Rob, thoughts?
Well, I think it's important what you said at the end. It doesn't answer the question, but it is comforting to know that you are less reactive probably and more thoughtful in talking about this because you have support. And I think this is a very genuine question. And actually, it's very easy to answer, at least technically. A slip to me is, we might say, an unintended return to old behavior. So I wasn't plotting for days that I was going to do this. It was probably in the back of my mind somewhere, but I looked at porn, or I talked to my ex, or whatever it is that I did. It could be whatever. What I do with that, if it's a slip, is I feel terrible about it. Then I go tell my sponsor or my therapist or my clergy, whoever is my trusted person around this. And I give it a little bit of time, like a few hours to calm down, maybe a day. And then I must go to my spouse and say, I broke my bottom line. I know you guys would like to know, by the way, the moment it happens, but you have to understand that we have issues. And I need to have some understanding of why I'm telling you, not just because I might run to you to try to for you to make me feel better, So in any case, a slip is an unintended, sometimes we do, but an mostly unintentional slip into old behavior, which is followed immediately by calling yourself out and getting help. A relapse is very clear. You do a behavior and it's not a good thing, and that it's breaking your sobriety, or someone's going to be upset and all that, and you don't tell anybody. Within yourself, like, oh, I don't want to start this whole process again, or they think I'm just a beginner now, or, I don't want to start my time again. So they just simply won't tell anyone. And of course, once you give yourself permission to act out and don't tell anybody, well, then there aren't any consequences right away. And so it leads them, it's like the alcoholic who says, nobody's around, I'll have a glass of wine, no one will ever know. Well, relapse is when you return to old behavior and you don't do anything about it. You don't tell anyone, you take any steps, you just move on in your life like it never happened. That's relapse. A slip is, I did this, I feel responsible for it, I'm going to clean it up, even if it doesn't go well when I talk about it, and then we can move on. And I just want to say one more thing to the spouses is if we tell you that we looked at porn or we stopped at a massage parlor, trust me, you're going to hate us. It's not going to be a good night, a good week, or good. But if we come to you, I do want you spouses to understand that the behavior is different. I may have slipped into something I did before because we have issues. There are mental health, there are addiction, there are all of that. But what's most important to spouses, what I've learned over time, is that we tell you that what you will say is, I hate them. I can't believe they did this to me. They've drove me crazy. But this is different. I'm not wandering around in the dark, wondering what they're doing. They actually, now, would we want them to have a slip? No. But if they do, we certainly want to know what's going on. Then we're included, then we're a part of. That's the part you guys are all worried about. It isn't even so much the sex. It's like, what the heck's going on in my life? This way, I have to say one more thing about that. To you partners, and I love you dearly, but if you say to one of us addicts, and if you do this again, I'm leaving you, there's only one thing I want you to think about. You must be prepared to leave. Because if we act out and we tell you, or you find out, and you say, okay, well, let's work this out. We have learned as addicts, they say they're going to do this, but they're not really. So the one thing I would not throw out in a coupleship is, if you do this again, I will leave. And there's two reasons for that. One is, you better be ready to leave, because that's what you got to do. Your word matters. And the other thing is, you want us to be honest. You want us to come forward. You want us to share our problem with you, for good or for bad, in good times and in bad. You want to know. So understand that if you say to me, if you do this again, I'm leaving you. What you're telling me is, don't tell me, don't talk to me, don't be honest with me, because if you're honest with me, I'm going to leave. So that works against what we're trying to do, which is the most important thing, which is we become honest people with integrity. There's a reason why I named our program with the word integrity in it. It's because I don't want people living in double, triple lives and saying they're doing one thing while they're doing something else. So anyway, that's my big long answer to that. I think I answered her question.
Yes, and I'm going to tag on a little bit, but I get frustrated when people use "I'm in recovery." I have a friend who's a CSAT, and he would not let his clients use the first 90 days. It was abstinence. On day 91, they could start saying they're sober, and then it would be a longer process before they could say they're in recovery. And recovery is living life differently. And we talk about that's a journey. And that, the first little bit is like, I'm hanging on, I'm not, not acting out. When somebody drinks, like there's people that binge drink and they go, I don't really have a problem because I only drink, once a month on weekends. Yeah. Yeah. But when they do, it's a disaster. Does that mean that they're not an alcoholic? No, they're still having negative consequences of it. It isn't about how often it happens. So if this is cycling around, and there's some sort of pattern to it, to me, that's the cycle of addiction. And there, it might be slightly longer, but if you're finding out about this every week or every few weeks or once a month or whatever, we've had clients that had a site at our program who cycle like every 90 days, and it, like they recognize that there's that pattern, and they can be okay for 90 days and then they're gonna act out. They're still an addict, and that doesn't mean they had 90 days of recovery. So to me, the language is different. There's abstinence, and then there's some sobriety where I'm starting to get a clue about some of these things. But recovery is, I am, like we talked about earlier on the, like how long before I can do things. It's like, I am committed to my recovery. I want in integrity to live my life. I don't want to lie to myself. I don't want to lie to others. That's the difference. So I love that you're taking care of you, that you're getting support. That's what you have control over, is you, and setting healthy boundaries for you. As Dr. Rob said, it's not about punishing the addict. It's just for your safety. But yeah, as long as, to me, that's, so lips are moving, but the actions are not aligning yet. But he's working with a CSAT. He's doing some things, but this is a 24/7 issue. And if he's going to a CSAT once a week for 50 minutes, and doing a group, great. But still, that's like a couple of hours a week. You know, there's a whole bunch of time. Dr. Rob talked earlier about structured time. What are you doing every day for your recovery? That's key to how we change. So, anything
I
else
had
to add?
just a couple of, yeah, thank you, Tammy.
Sure.
You always like inspire thoughts in my head. One of the main things I want to say with all due respect, and I think you should take care of yourself in this way, is I don't think that you're hearing about everything. I think we can pretty much conclude from this that unless this person's going to get found out, or sometimes they tell you because they think it looks good, or but this is not somebody in recovery. And by the way, your question, I say to every spouse, trust your gut. You know when the person you love has really taken something seriously. I mean, despite all the craziness, and you can see when someone you love has brought something into their heart, and when they're just doing it to look good. You know that. And this is someone, I think, this woman who knows inside of her that this isn't working. The very questions she's asking are questioning things I think she already knows. You know what he's not doing well. You know that this is what you feel and it's true. You know there's probably more. And the reason I say that part, by the way, is make sure you use protection. Make sure you don't have sex with him or whoever this is, because maybe they're not protecting you. And I just had a client at Seeking Integrity who had given his spouse an STD, and he never told her. So she found out years later. I want you to, since you don't know, and for anyone, if you don't know your spouse is in recovery, you really don't believe they are, then do what you can to protect yourself from an STD. And does that sound harsh? Yes. Is it something that happens all the time and you don't want to know about it till it does? Yes, you got to take care of yourself. So I feel like dad. I'm like, take care of yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but it is important, and I feel bad that partners feel shame about having to go get this, and I get that on some level. But I'm big on taking care of my health, so I would want to be an advocate for myself, But I understand. But like, if you don't take care of you, guess what? Your partner isn't. So it really is important. So.
And I want to say one more thing. Sorry, you're in a CSAT-led betrayal group, and I think that's really important. But there are courses that you can take. Partners have courses they can take. Addicts have courses they can take. We teach quite a few of them. And I know one thing that would make me feel more comfortable is, well, at least I see them working. They got a workbook. They went going to a class. They're calling some of the people they met in the class. At least I would see something that made me feel like this was an active process. There are also courses, there are all kinds of courses. Spouses get theirs too, because you have a learning curve as well. But the reason we offer the courses is the amount of really time I've spent thinking about this, writing books about it. And I want to say here, this is concretely going to help. So and courses, yeah, they're online. Thanks,
I
Tammy.
just popped it
Thank
into
you.
the chat. So, okay.
Okay.
This is a question that you and I can relate to. I find it really hard to concentrate on one thing at a time. Can we relate? Yes. We're laughing because we can relate. When my wife or anyone talks to me, my mind is thinking of loads of other things at the same time, and I often forget the conversation very quickly. If I don't write things down, my therapist says it disappears from my brain. Is this common for addicts? Any advice on how to concentrate and retain better?
Well, I'm going to give a thought. No, I don't know you. I don't know your therapist. I don't know anything about your life. But one of the things I'm reasonably good at is assessing for mental health issues. And I think one of the reasons that our clients do particularly well at Seeking Integrity, we're not just looking at addiction. I'm very focused on looking at emotional and mental health. So when I hear lots of things going round and round in my head, and I have trouble holding on to things because I'm now focused on this, and I hear symptoms. Could it be attention deficit disorder? Absolutely. They ADHD folks get distracted by this, and then they look over here, and trust me, I'm married to one. But it could also be some kind of bipolar thing where your mind is racing and your thoughts are racing. And, so to me, this is something I would absolutely want to see a psychiatrist for. And, with all due respect to your therapist, some therapists are not too keen on medication, doctors, and some others, because they think, they may be the best at doing it and they have your welfare at heart. They just don't think it's useful. And some therapists are really encouraging. And all I can say about that is this: I use my own recovery. I don't care about medication. I don't care about walks or meetings or whatever I had to do to get well. Whatever I had to do, as long as it was honest and had integrity, whether it was taking medications, seeing this particular therapist, going to workshops, I didn't care. I was going to do whatever it took to get well. And I would suggest to you that to get well, you may need to talk to a mental health professional who can prescribe medication like a psychiatrist. That's my
Yeah, I
piece.
went with ADHD. No, I went with ADHD, and I was like, if you could see around my desk, I live by notes. I mean, I have mild ADHD. Mine is not, an extreme case, but I do
Tommy
have that.
invented
So
this, the thing where you tear it off and then there's another one and you tear. Didn't you invent? No, you worked with
I should
you
have.
bought stock.
I should have. I should have, yes, because like I love Post-its because I can stick them and I don't lose them even if the cat walks by. So that's a whole other tangent. See, this is how we work. But you see Dr. Rob writing notes. We have a shared list of things that we need to remember to talk to each. So we have learned tools to adapt to make sure that we can. That said, and I don't know how long you've been in recovery. I'm assuming you're the person in recovery. It takes time. So we are very scattered early in recovery, and it's very hard to concentrate. So it takes learning. I hate to share this, but I used to dig my fingernails into my hands so that I would be concentrating and paying attention. I had that. I mean, it was that challenging to just be able to be present and stay, because otherwise my mind is, and if I was doing that, it's crazy, I know, but it worked for me. I found mechanisms to navigate around, this. Then I got diagnosed with mild ADHD and I went, makes so much sense, So you're taking notes. I love that. Reviewing them. I had Post-it notes across my bathroom mirrors, for years, of things I needed to remember, quotes I needed to think, anything that like was important to me, good positive messages to help me. Yes, thank you. That's the right word. Affirmations. I had them on my bathroom wall because I would see them over and over again. And eventually, I learned them. Like that's what it took, a whole bunch of Post-it notes. So invest in 3M and keep
It's
coming
a little
back.
late
So
now. They're online.
no,
I
but
know that
no,
our
here's,
generation, but
yeah.
believe me, I'm like, where's the paper? We should, no, just pull up reminders. It's faster for me to write it down, but I'm not going to go there. Let me say something else. Just to take Tammy out and from any shame or discomfort, I bit my lip. So you did this, and I'm like,
that's so
like that,
interesting.
remind
Yeah.
myself, or when I'm anxious, or I don't do that anymore. But I did until I got on medication, and then I stopped biting my lip. But and I don't bite my nails anymore either. But I want to say something. I do want to say something about. I live with someone, and I have for 22 years, who has ADHD, and this is how we figured it out. I would come home, and maybe he would have made dinner. And then there were lots of dishes. I expected that, but there was no one in the kitchen. And I would follow this trail of socks and underwear and clothing that had been dropped everywhere. And then there was, the computer was on, there were all these papers there, and he was taking a shower. And I'm like, okay, the place is a mess. It's nice that you made dinner, but all of that. And he would promise me, I won't do that next time, or that's just how I am. The longer it went on, the angrier I got, because it became about, well, if you love me, you would remember this. Or if you love me, you would remember that the house has to be clean, because I grew up in not such a clean place. If you remembered me, and so I became very personal. And then we went to get some therapy and found out he had ADHD, meaning he'd start cooking and then forget about the dishes, and then the phone would ring and he'd be taking off his clothes, and then he had to get to the computer, and he doesn't even remember one thing to another. So I think our relationship would be over had there not been treatment for ADD. And the other thing is, just if you're in a partnership, just for any of you guys, there are books: How to Be Married to Someone Who Has ADD, How to Negotiate a Relationship, because you got to figure this stuff out. How do you, if things go out of your head, how do you keep track of them? How do you, for example, I'll just see real quick. We learned about special places, which means the place my husband puts his keys every single time. The place he puts his phone every single time, because we could spend half an hour. He's like, well, I thought I put it there. I thought I put it there. He's not forgetful. That's how his brain works. So we learn things like, you don't have to ask me because you know it's there. It seems simplistic, but shoot, I use letter games to remind myself of people's names. So whatever it takes. Tammy's nodding her head like, yes,
Yeah,
learning.
yes. Like the keys always go in this place. If they're not there, then it's a problem. I mean, it's just
Right.
like there's lots of tricks you can learn to do, and you just learn them, one at a time, and you find out what's successful for you. So, and it looks like I'm completely ADHD because I was typing in the chat the link and I wasn't seeing it, so I put it in 3 times. So there you go. So
To me, that means you're caring and empathic.
I do. It was such an amazing, yeah, and there's a podcast on it too, but it was such an amazing information. So, okay, next question. As a spouse of a recent discovered SA, how do I best deal with his family who have enmeshment issues and have openly blamed me in part for his infidelity? Boundaries with his family are easy for me to manage, but difficult for my SA spouse to handle.
Okay, hold on a second. How do I deal with his family? And then they said boundaries with his family are easy for me. So help me
This
understand.
means that the spouse is really good at setting boundaries with the addict's
Got it.
family, but the addict is really not very good at that. So there's the problematic relationships.
Well, you get so many phone calls about this particular issue, or people email you and say, gee, I don't know what to do. Then why don't you start? By the way, it's TAMI at Seeking Integrity. Tammy often.
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
Okay. So how would you answer this one? Because I think I'd love to hear your response.
And it's really challenging, but so here is the deal. They're going to blame you, of course, so I hear you holding healthy boundaries with that this isn't about you, that there's a lot more going on. This is, we talk about lots of layers, peeling back the onion. This is one of those that's a big deal. So to me, the biggest primary focus is working on the essay, and as part of the recovery process, we learn to have healthy boundaries for ourselves, as well as, it's like Dr. Rob talked a bit earlier about, like, this is a problematic place for me to go. So I'm not going to go to that place. That's a healthy boundary. So what do we need to do for ourselves for our recovery? That would be enough of a focus. We have lots of resources that talk about, family enmeshment and things like that. But to me, if the spouse is really working on his SA recovery, then, getting that solid,
Tammy,
can be
you tell
really
them
helpful.
about how to find those resources and what they are? Because I know I've talked about work, and I've talked about the treatment program. I've talked about our courses, but I don't think anyone's talked about that part.
Well, and we do, there's books, there's podcasts. Dr. Rob did a podcast, but we've got a couple of webinars that talk about enmeshment. There was a series, we did a couple of those, but there's a lot of resources. So email me about those particular resources. But to me, trying to deal with all the enmeshment and everything else can be really triggering. So how can the two of you kind of, concentrate on, we need to, this is a really big problem. This is the biggest problem right now. And whatever his family says, it is challenging. I know for sure, because I know enough people that have gotten help with the enmeshment, that it is so freeing for them to be able to hold a healthy boundary with a previously enmeshed, family relationship. So there is healing. It is a process. None of this stuff is like, you just do this and then it's all better. It really will take more. So I love that you know how to do that, and you can invite, I can help you with this if you are open to it. You can support but you also don't want to get triangulated in the mix. So hopefully your spouse goes, wait, this is my primary relationship and I really want this in recovery. but it's challenging. So
And Tammy is 100% right, which is, I think this needs to be turned around, because my question would be, how come my SA spouse isn't looking out for me? Yes, I know you're hungry. We'll have dinner soon. That was a dog.
that's his dog, not his
That's a
spouse.
dog.
Yeah.
And I may have to let him go outside. But where is your spouse saying, you don't get to talk to my wife like that? And, you know, we are a couple, and I don't ever want to hear you devalue her or put her responsible for anything. Let me let the dog out. If they feel, I don't know why they know about all this, by the way. Talk about bad boundaries. Go ahead, Joseph. Go outside. Go on, stubborn thing. Okay, sorry. Where is your spouse saying this isn't acceptable, and I love you, and my family doesn't get to talk to you this way? And, you know, where is that? And that would be the discussion I would have is, you know, I can not come or whatever, but how do you want to handle this? Are you, when I don't come for something, are you going to blame me? Or are you going to say, you know, what are you going to say? But this is someone not respecting his marriage. And that concerns me more. You know, when I make a decision, and we did a podcast with Dr. Stan Tatkin, and he said, when I make a decision in life, if I want a happy relationship, that decision has to be based on what's best for both of us. So the question is his relationship with his family and is it working to the highest good of both of you? Or is he making decisions that are more in favor of his family rather than his marriage? I mean, this is his issue, right? I mean, this is the issue, staring him in the face about enmeshment and all that, but it's ended up in your lap. And that's unfortunately something he did to you. Something else. Oh, the blaming infidelity. Yeah, recently also, I wonder about your grief. You know, the question you're asking is very sophisticated, and it's a really good one, but recently discovered means that you are probably overwhelmed and not knowing what your next step is. And I think there are a lot of, you know, there's a lot of work we do where you can find that kind of support, and there's no cost. So Sex and Relationship Healing offers that, and I think Tammy already put that in the chat. But we do charge people in our courses, and then there's free work, and then there's the treatment center. So anyway, I want to say one more thing about this.
Oh,
go ahead.
well,
No,
while
go ahead.
you're thinking about it, because, you know, like this is very common, unfortunately, for sex addicts. And I mean, if you think about it, it sort of makes sense. It still is very painful. And I agree with Dr. Rob. You are doing a really good job of, you know, keeping this on the thinking level, but there's got to be a lot of feelings. But if you think about someone who has those enmeshed relationships, then when that person gets in a primary relationship with a spouse, you know, or a significant other, you know, a closer relationship, there's a betrayal to that family, that parent, or however that was. And so, you know, having anonymous sex, having, you know, acting out in other ways is easy and doesn't betray, you know, the strong connection, unhealthy connection to the family. And, you know, and I go back to, because like, it's so, you know, it's so terrible that it happens. Yes. But it's, you know, broken people, those parents, you know, Dr. Rob shared a little while ago, you know, about, you know, his situation. You know, it's those, you know, the parents that are doing this, there isn't malice, there isn't a plan for doing these terrible things to our children. It is out of their brokenness. They're doing the best they can. And unfortunately, the damage to, you know, to the children is, you know, is devastating. But, you know, for the people that step into this space and find healing and recovery, it changes everything. So I want to let you know that there is qualified help. There is hope. Again, we have many of the guys that come to our residential treatment program because they really get a solid foundation, you know, of working through all of this complex stuff in a short amount of time, and have a foundation of recovery on which to build and a plan to move forward. So it, you know, it's life-changing for them, and for spouses. You know, we hear that regularly as well. So
We do. We just got a wonderful letter from someone.
We did. Did you think of what else you were going to?
I did. I wrote down Thanksgiving. because I don't know who told these parents, but why do these parents need to know? Why do they know about their son's sex life? Why do they know about your sex life? And who told them that? If you told them in anger, do you know what your son is doing? Well, it's going to come back to you, I promise, because why did you tell us this? And she's exaggerating. And, if you did it in anger, that probably isn't going to go well. If he just decided to tell them, happens at Thanksgiving? How do you all sit down at a table on a holiday and he cheated, she lied, all the stuff that doesn't get talked about? I mean, it is none of his parents' business about your sex life. They should be, that's for you guys, go find a therapist. Here's the grandchildren, there are certain things I would be open to talking to my family about. There are certain things I would say, I understand you're concerned about me, but I'm not going to talk about that. So I don't know why they even know about this, no less are turning to you as the source of the problem. So we got
sometimes they're made very public. I mean, sometimes there's
that.
And we know that, I mean, it's been on the news, people have put signs up. I mean, it's been, so you're right. And there could be more that we don't know. So
it's early.
Okay. The next
you gotta say
question or comment. Wow, thank you so much for answering my question. I am currently in Sex Addiction 101. That's one of the work groups. I put the information in the chat and have found you both in the community to be life-changing. Oh, thank you. I really want to do a one-on-one with you and my partner soon. So may we talk about what a one-on-one with you is? Well, I will, because you're not nodding your head. So Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation for people. It's usually couples. If you're not in a relationship, then he can do that for individuals. But it's so helpful for him to have the information from the two of you so that he can help identify what the issues are and guide next steps. And people have gone to multiple therapists for multiple years and has continued to, as I say, flounder around. And that's painful for both of you, each of you, and a waste of time and money. So having Dr. Rob, who is particularly good at this, be able to help you figure out what is really going on for the two of you, where you are, and give you some information on next steps, can be useful. It is optional. It's just one path, but many people do find that helpful. So you can always reach out if you'd like some additional information. Okay. Comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm writing something down. I had to first see which way it went so that it wasn't a mirror. You know what I mean? Like, okay.
Yes.
So you won't be able to read this, but I often write notes to the clients, and maybe you want to take a screenshot of this and hold on a second. Let's find the question. Okay. Oops. No,
it's upside down.
The truth will set you free.
I will put it in the chat.
Set you free. So, why am I even saying that? Because
we're talking about expert consultations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I told you I was going to blank out today. One of the things that I want to say enjoy it, but I think it's really helpful is I am pretty unvarnished in my consults. So, I don't know you. I don't, I'm not there to nurture you. I'm there to find out what's going on and to give you information. I consider my consults kind of like, I tell folks, I'm like the radiologist. Your doctor sends you with your broken arm and says, I need to see the radiologist. I need a report. And then that report goes back to the doctor. But in my case, the report goes to you and I'm the radiologist, and it's just recommendations on what to do next. And I do find a lot of couples are floundering. Isn't it floundering around?
Floundering.
Like the fish. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can kick some butt if I'm asked to. So do we have time for one more?
Well, somebody put a comment in. It's a kind of a follow-up. Says, we did a consult with Dr. Rob. He was spot on with my addict husband, was still lying at that time. This was the very beginning when I found out, and he said it was only one time. Boy, it was definitely not one time. He saved us. Thank you, Dr. Rob and Tammy. So thank you for that. So that is really, really helpful. So
let's do one more.
Yeah. That's it. We don't have any more. No.
Oh, everyone is healed. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
Tammy, so one more thing. I know, and I'm so grateful for these letters that we get. And I don't know if it's said to these guys, but sometimes we get somebody with a newborn, and they'll say we wouldn't have been able to get to this place unless we found recovery. And they send it to us for a reason. We get wedding pictures, we get the whole family together for the first time, and we get notes. I would say, Tammy, I'm just going to say to you, it is not directly related to our work, but I think we saved someone's life over the weekend. And didn't get anything for it except the feeling of, maybe this person's going to make it, and her children. So, a lot goes on behind the scenes that we don't get paid for, but that's my commitment in life, is to try to help where I can. That's why we have all these free services. And yes, I think we share that one, Tammy.
Yeah, it's really meaningful. And unfortunately, not everybody's a success story, but if we, even if we help a partner figure out this is really important data, and what you're hearing is what this person is, and unfortunately that happens. But
I wanted to say one more thing since we're talking about this. Some people send people to drug and alcohol treatment or our program, and they come home and they're not fixed. We don't fix. We give people a different lens to look through the world, and a deep understanding of how they got here and who they hurt. And I absolutely believe that, at the treatment center, everybody gets on a piece of paper every single thing they're supposed to do when they get home. And in fact, I really encourage the spouses to get the same piece of paper to all the things. But recovery doesn't take place in a treatment center. Recovery takes place in every day of your life. And so, whether you never get to treatment, never have a therapist, just go to meetings or whatever, you will find your way. You will find your way. Tammy, you want to add to that at all? But it's an everyday, one day at a time. It really is. And I can show you the path, but I can't make you walk it. But I can sure show you what that path looks like. Do you want to add anything, Tammy? Because I actually think it's important.
Well, I do. I say all the time that we don't magically fix anybody in 14, 21, or 28 days, but we do give them a solid foundation and help. They're safely cocooned, and the expert treatment team is so good at helping unpack, these deep underlying things, and giving them a path to go home with. But it is, and I've seen, unfortunately, I've seen other treatment program stuff, and it was treatment light, shall we say. So I love that they leave with a plan, and if they follow the plan, they can do very well. And we hear from that all the time. And then I hear the ones that, I've just been in treatment, so I'm going to take a few days off. My addiction never takes a day off. My addiction is there, all the time. So my recovery better be as active as, to defend against that. And I still feel that way. So it's one of those where
you made me laugh
recovery.
Because I can remember clients who came at Seeking Integrity said, listen, I'm going to go through 3 weeks of your program, and then the Sunday after, I've got a trip to Mexico for 3 weeks. And that's not it. You get to work right away. You put it in your life, especially while the iron is hot. And I'm not saying we do it perfectly, we heal everybody, but it really is about motive. The one thing that we cannot create is motivation. I can do anything in the world with you, but I cannot. You have to want this, and you have to want it bad. And the same for you spouses, Anyway, nice to see you, Tammy.
Thank you, Dr. Rob. Thanks,
Dinner
everybody,
time.
for the great questions. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Good night, folks.